Welcome to Above Replacement Radio. I am your host, Chris Gianta. I might be becoming a bad baseball fan who can't enjoy the romantic things because of advanced statistics. 15 years from now, I want to be on the early baseball committee. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran.
I literally have the Fangraphs hoodie, the baseball reference t-shirt, just repping some stats, you know what I'm saying?
It's not necessarily Hall of Fame. It's not necessarily above average, but we can guarantee you we are better than just the standard replacement level college sophomore.
And welcome to Above Replacement Radio. We're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Chris Gianta. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I'm doing very well today. We just finished the second to last weekend of the regular season. We've now entered the final week before playoffs start, and it's crazy that playoffs are so soon. It really doesn't feel like they're as quickly approaching as they are, but a lot went down this weekend, a lot of shakeups in the standings and shakeups in where teams stand. And yeah, we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
And also more importantly, we have a guest interview today.
Yes, for the third time we have Mark Simon coming on. Our official title for him is defensive correspondent, and yeah, he delivered on some of the defensive questions we have on certain teams, on certain players, and a lot of tangents to go on. Talked about a specific dead ball era and 1920s and 30s starting pitcher icon. Yeah, pretty interesting stuff. So without further ado, we shall talk a little bit about, the standing shakeup and the fact that the Mariners have lost 4 in a row and are now, I think, a game and a half out of the
wild card,
out of the third wild card spot. After they had been rolling pretty well, but this month of September has not been very kind to them, and it has had an exclamation mark put on it with these last 4 games, most notably with a sweep against the Rangers.
Yeah, before last episode, we talked about how the Mariners were starting their 10-game span where they had the Rangers and Astros to finish up the regular season. And what I said for the Mariners is that they needed to go 6-4 over that span. And they've already had all 4 losses and they've not won a single game. So, thanks to some other things that happened, they are actually very lucky to be in the situation they're at where they're only a game and a half out of the playoffs. So the standards are a little lower, but I mean, they're going to have to play some really strong baseball now in the final, 5 games, 6 games, 6 games. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And the luck we're talking about is the fact that the Astros got swept by the Royals, which it was shocking. It was crazy to see. And the Royals never came back to win one. They always had complete control of every game, which was
every
crazy.
Time I check the score in the 3rd inning, it's like, oh, they're up again.
Yeah, it was nuts. So yeah, the Royals swept the Astros, but if the Astros didn't come away with the win yesterday, it would be the Astros that we would be talking about, and not the Mariners, because they've the Astros were kind of blowing it as well, but they currently stand a game and a half above the Mariners. I think with the Mariners particularly in the last 4 games, it's been a lot on their starting pitching, which is not something we're used to saying. Their starting pitchers have allowed 3.7 home runs per 9 innings, which is pretty absurd. That is the second highest rate of home runs out of a starting staff in baseball in this short 4-game span. They also have the second worst ERA and second worst FIP in the last 4 games as a starting staff. So yeah, it's been a pretty rough turn through the rotation, and that's a lot of the reason why they're in this position right now.
Yeah, no, the Mariners, the Rangers took a pretty commanding lead in most of those games, and the Mariners made an effort to come back. I think they were down 7-2 at one point on Sunday, and they closed it to within like 5-7, and then like I think the final score was 9-8. So they fought their way back, but ultimately they dug themselves into some tough holes early in games, uh, and that kind of did it. Alternatively, the Texas Rangers, really impressively are on the cusp of winning this division. Their magic number is now 4. Uh, and that would make them very likely the 2 seed in the playoffs. It would give them a bye, and it would give them one of the best, like you said on last episode, one of the best justifications for going big in the offseason that we've seen in recent memory that didn't immediately, we can't say this yet, but didn't involve a World Series.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the Rangers potentially winning this division is a great story. I mean, the fact that, they they've already won I think 20 more games than they did last year. If I stand corrected, I think they've won 88 games. And also, I mean, they were not a great spot. They had lost 8 in a row. They had been, on the verge of losing a playoff spot. I think out of the playoff picture entirely for a brief moment. And, when a lot of people were doubting them, including us, they go out, they sweep, they sweep the Mariners. And, it seemed like they were sort of the odd ones out, just talent wise, especially with some of the injuries they had. But they really just as a lineup, like particularly as a lineup, they really just showed out.
Do you think if the Rangers win the division that Corey Seager has earned himself one first place MVP vote from a Texas writer?
um, yeah, that might happen. That might
I think
happen.
it's I think it's very possible.
Yeah, I mean, it like 0.1% of me was scared when you said has earned himself, and I was like,
No,
wait,
no, 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 no,
and then
no, no, no.
yeah, a first place vote from a Texas writer. Yeah, I'm excited for the column, for the
Yeah.
column about it, and pretending that you know the Rangers wouldn't be better with Shohei Ohtani than they would Corey Seager, but it'll be. I'm ready for that. Yeah, it'll be nice.
Yeah, no, that's going to be very exciting to see which Rangers writer was assigned AL MVP that ended up putting it. There's going to be 2, of course, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's going to be a lot of fun
yeah,
to see which one of them it is.
yeah. It definitely will be. Um, but uh, but yeah. So as it stands now, Rangers are 2.5 up on the Astros in the American League West. The uh, Mariners are 1.5 games back in the AL wild card picture. I think the Blue Jays are a game up on, or maybe half a game up on the Astros for the 5th seed. If I'm not mistaken. I should look into that. And then yeah, obviously the Rays are like way up on the Blue Jays. Or yeah, the Blue Jays are 1.5 games up on the Astros. Blue Jays are in a pretty safe spot right now. Knock on wood. We see how quickly everything seems to change, but the Astro, the biggest beneficiaries of the Astros getting swept and the Mariners getting swept happens to be the Blue Jays, and they seem
Yep.
like they're in a decent spot.
Yeah, no, I think they're pretty safely now in one of the wild card spots. I don't know off the top of my head what their magic number is, but um, I think Blue Jays fans should be definitely a lot less stressed out now than they were last time we recorded.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. They got a series against the Yankees at home starting tonight. And then they have the Rays, and who knows how much the Rays will be playing for by the time the Blue Jays host them, because yeah, the Orioles could hypothetically clinch the division by then. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the status of where we are at in standings. Do we want to get into the NL at all?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things we can get into. The Marlins are still in it. The Reds, yikes. They blew a 9-0 lead on Saturday and lost 13-12. For the Pirates, it was the largest come from behind victory in franchise history, which that's a dead ball team, so that says a lot.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, they did salvage one game in that series against the Pirates at home on Sunday, but you gotta hope for better. in that case. Joey Votto might have played his last games at Great American Ballpark as a Red. If they don't make the playoffs, they obviously are still in it, but it's a long way up for them now.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, and part of that does have to do with the fact that the teams above them, most of the teams above them, did perform pretty well. Miami took a series against the Brewers. After getting pummeled 16-1,
Yeah.
they took 2 wins on Saturday and Sunday. The Cubs swept the Rockies as they should have, and put themselves in a spot where they're a game up on Miami. And now Arizona is in the mix of potentially falling out as they lost a series to the Yankees, a tougher team than what the Cubs were facing, but they find themselves, in a situation where they could potentially fall out of this. Yeah, and with the Reds, like, one of the things I said on why I sort of like them as a sneaky team was their schedule, but not taking advantage of it when you blow a 9-0 lead to Pittsburgh.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean it was a brutal loss for them. And I think if they don't make the playoffs, I think a lot of people are gonna point to that game as when it like truly ended.
Right. It seemed like the real stamp. However, the odds of them making it were still relatively low at the time, but it doesn't help them in the least bit. And yeah, as far as outlooking what these NL teams have going for them, it looks like the Marlins start a series against the Mets tonight. The Cubs start a series in Atlanta tonight. So, and Atlanta seems to be rolling out a lot of their starters. So could be tough for Chicago. And and then the Diamondbacks start a series against the White Sox tonight. So good for Arizona there to be able to maybe bounce back in the South Side. So yeah, and then we'll see what they have for the weekend. But yeah, looks like the Diamondbacks have the easiest path, at least based on just this week.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm curious now. It makes me curious as to what. Yeah, Marlins have Pittsburgh after that. The Cubs have Milwaukee after this, and the
And then they
D-backs
have Atlanta, right?
the D-backs
Yeah.
have Houston at home.
Yep.
But yeah, no, Cubs have a tough path, but the Diamondbacks have a tough series against Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And Marlins are facing 2 sub 500 teams. So that's pretty cool. Pretty cool for them.
Big for them for sure.
Yeah, because they are the team that is a game out of it. All right. Anything more before we get into our Mark Simon discussion?
No, let's get to it. This is a fun one.
All right, without further ado, for the third time in Above Replacement Radio history, here is Mark Simon. And we are happy to be joined by the Above Replacement Radio defensive correspondent, Mark Simon of Sports Info Solutions, also one of the developers of Defensive Runs Saved, one of the more famous sabermetric defensive stats since 2003. How you doing, Mark?
I'm good. Let's pump the brakes slightly on that. I didn't do anything to develop the stat. I do a lot to promote it. I do a lot to put it in a good stead. I am probably the person who writes the most about it. But I do want to give credit to the people that developed it, which is the likes of Bill James and the former owners of our company and people of that nature. I'm good.
Yeah,
how are you?
By the fourth time you come on, maybe I'll have exactly your role to a T.
I like it. I like it. I just want to pump ever so slightly on it.
All right. All right.
By the way, I was mentioning to Chris before you came on. This is the first time we've had you on post the three of us all meeting in person, which was Saber 50 in Baltimore 2022. And since then, you've become a Saber trivia champion. So congratulations to you.
Yes, first time, I think it was the 18th try between the team and the individual competitions. I got paired with a good group. In this case, I made a nice display piece that includes the award that I won. There's a picture of Bill Mazeroski. There's a picture of Maglio Ordonez. They were correct answers. Tom Glavine as well on the losing side of things. Losing his postseason pitcher of all time. Had to know who that was. Buzz, got it, no problem. And yeah, trivia champ.
Listen, as long as you did better than Chris and I, which the bar is not high there. Chris and I got absolutely cooked in that room in 2022. But
It's the smartest group of baseball trivia people that you'll ever come across, which is why winning on the 18th try is like kind of a neat thing.
Yeah, we didn't pre-give you this question, but what would you say is your most proud correct answer of the entire run?
Oh boy. So in not this year, um when the convention was held in Pittsburgh, about an hour before, I said to myself, you know what? I think they're going to ask to name the all-black lineup that started for the Pirates in the early 1970s, the first time that ever happened in a game. So I memorized it right there. And an hour later, it showed up. So that was in terms of like things where I actually knew something. Boy, I remember the ones that I got wrong. I know the one that I got wrong when I was in the finals, and I bet it all on a daily double, and I didn't get it. Curse you, Al Rosen, former Major League General Manager, also former rookie home run hitter in the late 1940s, who had the AL rookie home run record before Mark McGwire hit 49 in his rookie year. Curse you, Al Rosen. But that's made up for by the fact that I was a contributing member to a championship team. Yes.
Yeah, dude, you picked up on the sign and you got it right. You were so fast, you got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have done as a show a single seasons draft, and Al Rosen was picked as one of those guys for his 1953 season, where I think he had like 8 wins above replacement or something.
Oh, so here's where we go off onto tangents. Yeah, he was a decent player, like, but I still don't think I should have known that in 1950 as a rookie he hit 37 home runs, and driven 116.
Yeah,
he does have that 53 season, as you said. That's I'm sure great in any computer baseball classic game or Stratomatic or anything like that. 43 and 145, and he probably would have gotten a $250 million contract off of that season.
He should have.
Yep, he was a 10 WAR guy. 10 WAR guys, 10 WAR guy at age 29 would have been perfect timing.
Yeah, and nobody talks about it, but that was like insanely valued back in 1953. Everyone was like, all the newspapers were talking about will Rosen reach the 10 WAR plateau, and he did it.
Of course, it is. He was a good. So he was a GM of the early 80s Giants teams. There was a Giants team when I was like 7, the 82 Giants that got to the final weekend of the season in it, and he was the guy that put that team together. He had a very, we were just talking about Austin Riley. He had a very Austin Riley 5-ish kind of years from 1950 to, I guess, 1954.
Yeah, for sure. And to be completely fair to you, that 1950 season was not selected. So yeah, we didn't know that. We didn't know any of that. But yeah, so we mentioned you are of Sports Info Solutions, one of the promoters of defensive runs saved. So a lot of knowledge on the defensive side of the ball, which is one of the more underappreciated aspects of baseball, you could argue. And at the top of the defensive runs saved leaderboard on the team side is the Toronto Blue Jays. They are overwhelmingly at the top, or at least they were when I created this question,
Yep.
thanks to a lot of players like Dalton Varsho and Kevin Kiermaier. So what has propelled them to the top of that rank? And also part of the question is, they're, I think, 11th in outs above average. So it's a big discrepancy there. So what has propelled them there, and what might explain the differences?
No, that's a good question. It's one that I think I'm still wrestling with because someone else, actually someone who covers the Rays asked me this the other day. What's propelled them is that their center field number is so far beyond any other team that it's kind of ridiculous. They have 34 runs saved in center field this season. The second most is 18, and that's only because Johan Rojas has had this incredible run for the Phillies. The third most is 14. There's nobody else that's close. And I think that just what that is that at least within our system, we're of the belief that Kiermaier and Varsho in center field have just caught so many more balls that wouldn't have been caught by others, combine that with their arms and with a couple of home run robberies, and you get a situation where it's almost like the Blue Jays number becomes a little bit distorted. They still might be the best defensive team, but it's kind of like, would you rather have the Blue Jays, who are really, 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 really good in center field and very good in left and very good at catcher? That's something in terms of the outs above average comp. Catcher's not factored into that. So catcher is part of the reason for that. And they're very good at third base too. So they're really good at four positions. Or would you rather have a team like the Brewers, who have a positive number at 8 spots and only have a negative number in 1 spot, which is left field, which is probably, by some respects, you could make a case that it's the least valuable of them. And the Brewers are second in defensive runs saved. So to answer your question about the discrepancy, I think the catcher thing is part of it. And I think center field, we've kind of put them on this plateau. I'm not gonna say that I'm gonna back up our numbers. I think they deserve it, but they're so far beyond everybody else. It makes me wonder a little bit if we're capturing something either that MLB is not, or that we're overstating something maybe a little bit. It's something that probably warrants further examination. Regardless, the Blue Jays are a pretty good defensive team. They do have some weak spots, but they are a very good defensive team, not just center field, left as well, third base, catcher, for sure.
Kind of totally going with that. Kevin Kiermaier at age 33 is still like the supreme defensive center fielder in baseball, as he has been for the majority of his career. In the 21st century, he leads all center fielders in defensive runs saved with 151. Only Lorenzo Cain has over 100. I know that defensive runs saved, the numbers only go back a few decades, but like just anecdotally speaking, where do you think he would rank all time if we had defensive runs saved, like for center field specifically? Because I mean, like he's been on a run and he's only 33. Like he could keep going for sure, but like anecdotally speaking, how many center fielders career with volume and defensive runs saved do you think have been like better than Kevin Kiermaier? Because it might be top 10 all time.
Yeah, he's very, 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 very good. Can we put Willie Mays ahead of him, I guess?
Yes, that's the first name that I was thinking.
So with Willie Mays, I feel like I can qualify that because I wrote an article. Saber did a book about Willie Mays, and I did the 24 best defensive plays that Willie Mays made in his career as an article, where I found photos, I found articles, and it was very, I don't want to say it was simple, but I had like 40 to choose from. Like the guy was cited on a regular basis for being incredible in center field. So we'll start with him. Andrew Jones, certainly. I think that's someone more contemporary. I think that one is one that I think a lot of people would buy into. Then we get into, there are going to be these guys that I haven't seen, that I've just read about, where it's like, you hear that they're really, really good, like Paul Blair on those Orioles teams. Like if you ever want to have fun, you guys always want to have fun with Baseball Reference. I know that. If you ever want to have fun with Baseball Reference, look at like the defensive wars and the credentials of some of those late 60s, mid to late 60s, early 70s Orioles teams where their numbers just kind of jump off the charts at you. So that would be one. Gary Maddox, who I guess I caught the tail end of his career. Um, I'm just looking at Gold Glove winners now. Devon White would be another. Steve Finley was really good. Gary Pettis was really good. Marquise Grissom, who I saw, and I would vouch for that one. He was really good. There's some guys like there's a belief that Bernie Williams may not have been as good as his 4 Gold Gloves, but Kiermaier's really good. I think we can leave it at that. And you have a question that I know is coming about guys that helped themselves free agency wise. He definitely helped himself free agency wise with his defensive play this year. He would be someone that I would put near the top of the list.
Yeah, no doubt.
Right. Yeah, and Andrew Jones, by the way, I think he's the all-time outfield leader in defensive WAR. I looked it up, I think, when researching his Hall of Fame case. So yeah, he's definitely someone that would probably be up there. That's just me.
I didn't say Griffey. People
Yeah.
love Ken Griffey Jr. Ken Griffey Jr. has more the wow factor on his catches, maybe than the volume of really good
actual-
ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
It's like the Ellie De La Cruz complex.
right, but at the same time, 10 years of Gold Gloves, like
Yeah.
I'm gonna give him
Still.
I'm gonna give him credit for being pretty good. I think the hard thing with him is that after he got hurt as many times as he did, it faded a bit. But
Right.
still, like Kiermaier's really good. I think we can leave it at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been fun that we've been able to catch him for his whole career, and also had a lot of these metrics like for most of his career outs above average for the last, 9 or 8 seasons maybe, and then defensive run save for his entire career.
I love how his career started too. He played an inning in the 1-game playoff. Wasn't that how it started for him?
In 13?
Yeah, I think so.
It sounds
Wow.
about right. I know that's how McClanahan made his debut. Well, same organization.
I'm finding it right now. He played 1 game in 2013. It was the last game of the season. He came in. I think he came in the 9th inning, if I'm not mistaken.
Was it against Texas
trying to
for
think.
game 163?
It was 1 inning. Yep.
That's right. It was the game 163 because they played
Yep.
Texas and they played Cleveland.
I remember
Wow.
watching it, and I remember I was saying to myself, "Boy, it would be really funny if he caught the final out. Like that would be pretty crazy." It's kind of like Rowdy Tellez making his pitching debut.
Mhm. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And getting the last out to
Right, and getting the
get the
list out
Brewers
to
to the
clinch a playoff spot. Jeez, come on.
Yeah, absolutely. So a team that, the Blue Jays are at the top of the defensive run save leaderboard, a team that was always routinely near the top or at the top, was the St. Louis Cardinals from 2019 to 2022. They were top 4 every single year in that time frame, but now they are in the bottom 10, which definitely fascinates me considering they have much of the same personnel. What has kind of factored into them, just defensively regressing?
Yeah, that one's been I guess somewhat of a puzzler the whole year. One aspect of that is that the Wilson Contreras decision didn't go well. I'm looking at the numbers now because I don't necessarily know a lot of this off the top of my head, but he's -10 right off the bat. So that's a big problem right there. I know that early in the season that Jordan Walker was a problem numbers wise defensively in right field. He's at -7. They threw him into a tough spot, essentially asking him to be an everyday player very early in the season. And on the defensive side, if I remember right, too, there were some deep fly balls that he missed that hurt his DRS a bit. Edman doesn't have the numbers that he had last year. Tyler O'Neill doesn't have the numbers that he had. They've had just a strange season. Like Goldschmidt's numbers are fine. they've just had a weird year. I don't oh, and then the last thing, I'm sorry, I should have said this right off the top. Nolan Arenado spent much of the season in negative territory. I didn't watch the Cardinals every day, but I did do an article about Arenado and his defensive play. And they said he just didn't like the article basically said like he didn't have the magic that he had in previous years where he was making unbelievable play after unbelievable play. He was making a little bit more in terms of mistakes, but he didn't have the great plays to overtake those. Now, is there like a root cause to that? I don't know. There could be, but I think you'll get a better indication of that next year to see if he, bounces back, or if he's closed the year strong. I know that he's like +5 since the All-Star break. But yeah, the Cardinal thing is a mystery. I think they're the all-time team leader in DRS, and they're definitely the all-time team leader by a wide margin in Fielding Bible Awards.
Right, right. Yeah, they've yeah, and it's just like it's really helped out their pitching staff, over the past few years. They don't have really many strikeout pitchers.
Mm-hmm.
And, this year with them having, rolling out much like that same style of pitching staff and them not having the defense to back it up, it's definitely taken a toll. They're also one of the worst pitching teams out there right now.
Yep. Yeah, I feel like I refer to this sometimes when it happens in a postseason. It kind of happened for the Mets this year too, that the Cardinals are chasing the moment at which they led the Phillies in the 9th inning of Game 1 of the playoffs last year. And they've been chasing that moment where Gene Segura hit a pitch that was like a foot and a half off the plate. And ever since that moment, it's like everything that was up is down, and everything else goes sideways for them. And that's what's happened for them this season.
I got so excited that game because Andre Palante came in to pitch to relieve for Ryan Helsley. And those
I
of you
knew
that
this
know
was going to be
me,
a tangent.
Ryan or Andre Palante is like my favorite pitcher in all of baseball because he throws a four-seam sinker and he gets a remarkable ground ball rate off of it. And he gave up like 3 ground ball hits in a row. And I was like, "Oh my God, why is this the national stage introduction to Andre Palante? This isn't how it was supposed to be."
That's
Same,
right. This isn't how it was supposed to be. Is
Yeah.
exactly what you would say about that series and last year's
Mhm.
team.
yeah, same thing happened with Aaron Bummer in 2021. He gave
Yep.
up like 3 ground ball hits in an inning.
To be fair, that
Yeah,
was also when the White Sox just didn't shift. Uh,
yeah, yeah. But
when like the ground ball pitcher was up and there was
yeah,
like lefties coming up for
the
Houston.
guy the guy with like the 73% ground ball rate, and they're just not going to shift for him in 2021. And speaking of that shift, it
That
has
was
been a
also
major topic of conversation, especially before the season, and everyone was talking about how it's going to change things, and it's changed things a little bit. I mean, the numbers on pulled ground balls by lefties has definitely it's changed a lot, but other than that, it's nothing too crazy. What teams have been, most and least impacted by the MLB rule changes, specifically with the shift?
Yeah, so this is a really good question, and I don't know that I have a great answer at the moment because you have to ask yourself kind of like how much of it is talent, player talent, and then how much of it is the positioning aspect of things. And I think the answer for most is Houston, because the Astros, I was just looking at this like 5 minutes before we started talking. The Astros last year in defensive runs saved got an incredible amount of value out of how they positioned their infielders, meaning they got it right a lot and they did it a lot. And they got a huge chunk from that. And then this year, they quite simply haven't. And Bregman's been good at third, but Jeremy Pena has not had the same type of defensive year that he had last year at shortstop when he was really, really, really good. And they're problematic at second base. They're -10 for the season at second base. So I think the answer to that is the Astros. In terms of other teams that would be the answer, Houston was about as far as I got with this. Like the teams that I'm looking at, like I don't know if the I don't think the Mets would be an answer. I don't. Yeah, I think the answer to this is Houston, and I'm not even sure there's necessarily a close second because I'm looking at the way that we have our stats here, and the teams that are bad, that rate badly in terms of shifting, have good talent on their infield. Like the Orioles have a very talented infield all the way around. The Rockies have a talented infield all the way around that's made up for the bad positioning that they've had. So maybe Tampa, not Tampa Bay either, because Tampa Bay's has really good numbers at short and third when Franco was playing and when Taylor Walls plays. So it's a hard question. I think the answer is the Astros. I wish I had a second and third answer. I don't at the moment. I think Houston is the answer first and foremost on this one. And there are teams like the Phillies could use it. I think the Phillies could use a system of more defensive shifts. But yeah, I think I would leave it at that.
Yeah, looking at the team defensive run save leaderboards, it's broken down by position, infield positioning, outfield positioning, and then total. I'm sure you're, very familiar with how the website goes.
I appreciate that you're looking at it.
But yeah, the Astros are, they only have 7 defensive runs saved from their infield positioning on shifts particularly, and they also have -4 defensive runs saved on non-shifts,
Right.
which is interesting. So and most of the teams on this list are double digits in runs saved on shifts. Funnily enough, the Cardinals overwhelmingly lead on infield positioning through shifts, which is funny because we were just talking about how bad their defense has been.
Yep.
But yeah, the Astros.
You know what that's a sign of? That's a sign of they put guys in the right place, but they haven't necessarily made the plays.
Wow. Okay. It's a good discovery that we've made today.
It's a skill issue. Not on Ollie Marmol. Anecdotally speaking, the Astros, as we record this, are half a game in the playoffs right now. They basically have 1 foot out, 1 foot in, and it is very possible that if the Mariners play very well in this coming series, the Astros could outright miss the playoffs, in the middle of what we all thought coming into this year was going to be kind of a continuation of this dominant window. And when you're talking about missing the playoffs by a game in a 162 game season or 2 games, you could probably really look at, how they reacted to the shift ban as a major part of the reason why they lost. So if they miss the playoffs, is that the first thing you're looking at for what went wrong? Is it what else are you looking at for that?
That's a really you guys ask good questions. I don't know. I think what would I say here? I just think that I think the defense not being as good is part of the story. They're good. They're very good in center. Kyle Tucker had a really strange start to the season in right field, where his defensive numbers, which had been really, really good in the past, were just really poor this year. The Astros should be good. They're third in the American League in runs scored. They're middle of the pack in ERA, but I guess you could make the case that the ERA would be lower if the defense had been a little better. I don't know. Like one thing that surprises me that I'm looking at right now is Justin Verlander. Verlander, when he was with Houston the last couple of seasons with the Tommy John, obviously they are. We have this thing where you can look at defensive runs saved for an individual pitcher. He was always at the very top. But this year he's got since he joined the Astros, there's 9-10 starts, whatever it is, he's got more hits allowed than innings pitched. That surprises me. I'm a little surprised that that's happened for him.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily a home run problem, it seems, either. I don't think it's been, it's been a lot of stuff that's within the fielder's control, although he is striking out some less batters. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure his BABIP against is far higher than it was, definitely last year. I mean, albeit he had a great season last year, but there was definitely some BABIP luck on his side.
Christian Javier is the big one for them, and that doesn't appear to be a defensive issue. His FIP jumped by a run and a half this season, so that would be on my list. Even though he's 9-4, but that's 16 no decisions and 29 starts. I wonder how the team went in in those charts. Let me see.
I mean, Christian
Well, actually,
Javier.
scratch that. 20. He's 20 and they're 20-9. Scratch.
Yeah.
Delete that part of the podcast.
Yeah,
At least from
nobody heard
memory.
that.
From memory.
I mean, just going off of his FIP, Chris and I have talked pretty at length about Christian Javier, but he in 2022 had one of the highest pop-up rates in all of baseball. I think it was like 15% or something like that. And this year it's down a couple points, and his fly ball rate is up a few points. And when when your home field is in Houston and you have the Crawford boxes in left and a short wall in right, like a couple percentage points increase in fly ball rate, like that's gonna matter. And that's a large part of the reason why his FIP has gone so high up, because he's allowing a lot more home runs.
Right.
Can I volunteer a defensive story or two? Just
No,
to
go
kind of
ahead.
to bring
Please,
up one or two
yes.
other things.
Yeah.
So I mentioned the Brewers before. The Brewers are second. Brewers have as I said, the 8 positions where they've nailed it, had a positive run save total. There is a team that has 9 positions with a positive run save total, and I think this is a part of their story in 2023, and that would be Arizona. The Diamondbacks are positive defensive run saves at every spot. Defensive run save really likes Gabriel Moreno. It really likes Lourdes Gurriel, and everything else it likes a little bit. Whether it's their center field combination or Corbin Carroll or whoever, they're like a little bit over at just about every other spot. So that would be one. The other, I feel we have to at least acknowledge it, even though sometimes it bothers me a little bit, but Fernando Tatis in right field is the runaway leader in defensive run save by like miles and miles and miles and miles. He's at 28. The next closest guy is at 10. And then the other thing that I like acknowledging, you mentioned center field before, and I brought up Johan Rojas. There's Johan Rojas and Brenton Doyle in center field. And then at catcher, you have Moreno. You have Patrick Bailey of the Giants, who in the very beginning, like his first 50 games, he was ridiculous. He's cooled off a little bit, but you've got those two guys as kind of a new generation of catchers. Francisco Alvarez has been a very good pitch framer this year. In fact, by our measures, I believe, yep, he is the leading pitch framer in the majors. I know other sites might say it's Patrick Bailey, but it's kind of cool to see all these new guys between the 3 catchers and the couple of center fielders making nice runs at it this year. So those are a couple other things to bring up.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. You mentioned the Diamondbacks, and like Christian Walker is at first base and one of the best defensive first basemen in baseball. And you mentioned that they're the only team that has positive defensive runs saved at every position. There are a lot of teams that like lose that at first base, because it is kind of I think it's like one of the harder positions to accumulate defensive runs saved as, or at least, defensive stats on Fangraphs.
Mm-hmm. You know who's number 1 at first base this year? It's Carlos Santana of the Pirates.
I'm looking at it right now. He's at 10,
crazy.
Walker's at 9.
Now, what I think is a worthwhile exercise, and I did this because I wound up writing about it, was like I looked and I figured that maybe there was going to be something with like his top plays where we had distorted something or something was off, but no, like he's made really good plays this year. I think he might win the Fielding Bible Award. He might not. That might be our most interesting vote, because it's like, how do you handle a situation where you have a player who has the perception of Christian Walker? I think there is a perception that he's good, and there is a long-standing perception. There's a lot of body of work on Carlos Santana where you don't necessarily think he's awful, but you're not going to think of him as being like a Goldschmidt or Christian Walker or something like that. So I don't know, but at least from what I saw from the plays, it seemed like the numbers had him in a good place.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We know him as the walk machine, but not necessarily for defense. Carlos Santana.
When we think of Carlos Santana's defense, I'm thinking about him as a catcher way back in the day.
Yep. Who could forget? Who could forget?
Those numbers aren't good. I know that.
No, but listen, when you got a catcher that transitioned to first base, like that's a catcher forever in my heart.
Yep.
Like Mike Napoli, catcher. Joe Mauer, well, obviously Joe Mauer's a catcher, but catcher.
But it'd be really funny if you asked like 20 people who's the better
Oh
who's the
yeah.
better defensive first baseman, Carlos Santana or Freddie Freeman, 2023 only. Offhand, what would you say? Like, who's the guy with +10 and who's the guy at, I think he was at negative, he's at -8. I don't know how Freddie Freeman's at -8, but he is. That's atypical for him. But there's no way you would think that Freddie Freeman was the -8 guy and Carlos Santana was the +10 guy.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's in
But
what
as
a
Bill
term.
James said, stats are supposed to surprise you every so often, and those do.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a lot of what this show is about, is we try to highlight the
Those are
guys who are not being highlighted enough, and maybe talk like, hey, let's pump the brakes on some of these guys.
yeah. I know
So
you those
go
are
ahead,
words to
Daniel.
live by. Yeah, I put a question in the doc. I don't know if it was sent to you, but I know you kind of just anecdoted a lot on this. But if you had to pick one team very specifically, uh, which team that is in the playoffs, going to be in the playoffs, still in the picture, and there's reason to believe they'll be in it, will have defense as its biggest X factor in the playoffs.
Oh, love that. That's a
Like
really good one.
defense shows up, watch out for this team. If they don't, it's going to be a train wreck.
Um, Boy, I think the Dodgers are going to need it, because who the heck knows who's going to pitch for them throughout this thing. I think the Twins are going to need it because they're going to need something extraordinary to happen to beat any other team that they're going
The
to play.
6th seed.
Yes. They are, like, if the Twins won the World Series, the only more surprising thing would be if the 6th seed in the NL won it. But yeah, I think the Rays D should be good. The Orioles D, I think, should be good. Like the Brewers D should be really good. The Brewers are going to need it if they're going to wind up going anywhere in the postseason. Atlanta, like Olsen has been really good in the past. Michael Harris has a really good year last year. Acuna is interesting sometimes in right field. Great arm. Maybe the answer is them. Like maybe that's the answer here, but that almost feels like a cop out. I'll give you another though. Like the Phillies could be a lot, like the Phillies ranked what 26, 27 in defensive runs saved, but Real Muto's better than his numbers showed. Right. Bryson Stott's been really good. Trey Turner is probably better than his numbers showed. Brandon Marsh is really good when he's out there. Rojas is terrific. They're going to play Edmundo Sosa at the end of games. They have a chance to put a better defensive team out there at the end of games if they can get the lead at the beginning of games. That maybe they're the answer to this question.
Yeah,
like last year.
If they got Schwarber DHing, that defense is like already 10 times better as it is.
Yeah, and JT Realmuto, his years definitely surprised me. Like, I don't know if it's been part of the partially like rule changes and pitchers not being able to pick off, but I know his caught stealing rate is far below what it normally is.
Yeah, I don't necessarily that would strike me as the most likely reason for it is that it he doesn't have that advantage anymore and it dropped for everybody, and he kind of took it on the chin. The other thing is that he's getting older. He's 32, and he's still catching significant numbers of innings. And in the last 2 years, he caught 134 and 139. He played 134 and 139 games. Caught 130 last year, and caught 100. He's going to get 130 this year. Yeah, I think that might just be that he's getting older and that he had an extraordinary season last year.
Right. Yeah. On all fronts too. I think he was at one point like 17 for 17 in stolen bases before the rule changes. Like, as a base runner, it was wild to see what he was doing last year. Regarding I think we mentioned Kiermaier as one of these players. Players heading into free agency, because obviously, player value is, we get to see a lot of how teams value players based in the offseason. So we're wondering which, 2023 to 24 free agents have dramatically, or just in general, improved their, free agent value this offseason.
There's one. Matt Chapman is another. He showed that he's still got it. He's among the leaders in third base defensive run saved. He's not at the top. He's not at his peak, but he's still got it to an extent. I studied before before I talked to you on this one. The other name that I thought was interesting for defense was a player who helped himself is Jason Hayward. Hayward's had a much better year at the plate for the Dodgers, and he's had a good year when he's played right field. They have set him up for success in a good way. They only play him pretty much against right-handed pitching, and they play him in right field a pretty decent amount. He has looked something reasonably close to his prime self doing that. So I think that he is someone at 33, like if he had had another year like he had last year or such, he's looking for a minor league deal. He's barely out there, but now he'll get something because he's shown that he can do something. The other thing I'll give you is Mark Canha had previously shown himself in past seasons to be butchery in left field a bit, particularly weak with the arm. His numbers are actually somewhat of a positive this year, so he's another one where I think the fact that his defense is in a negative necessarily or a big negative, that you can put him in left field if you need to. I think that would be another one. He's had this great finish to the season too.
Right. And to kind of point out the history of this question, we've only asked it once, but it's gone in the correct direction. Two that I remember were Jace Peterson. We asked this question last year. It was Jace Peterson. He went out, he got a 2-year, $9.5 million contract as a guy who's kind of like a utility guy. He's not supposed to really get much money. And then the other one was Xander Bogaerts, who got $280 million from the Padres. And that would have been a risk, after 2021, he was kind of a defensive negative, or at least as a shortstop compared to other shortstops. And then, became one of the more reliable defensive shortstops as we've seen over the past couple of years, and got $280 million because of it, and probably wouldn't have gotten it if not for the improvement in defense.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that did help him last year. I would agree with that statement.
Yeah, I think it's part of why, honestly, the Red Sox were hesitant to extend him before or around the time 2022 is coming around. Because he was coming off like a four win season, wins above replacement wise, and part of that was because of defense. But yeah, that is another tangent to go down. As far as so I think that those are most of the defense questions we have. Maybe we'll get back into one, but one that one question, one story it's been prefaced before. It is about the great Howard Emke. How are we going to have a Mark Simon segment without talking some, old school baseball, pre-TV, even maybe radio baseball. So we're talking about Howard Emke. He started a World Series game. Am I correct?
Yeah, so the genesis of this, if I'm not mistaken, was it last year that I came on with you guys and we did some history stuff, and it appears that on July 14th, 2022, I sent you an email that said, I never got to talk about Howard Emke, inventor of the tarp, 1929 World Series hero. That might have had something to do with the fact that we spent the last podcast talking about Roger Peckinpah. But yes, it's always good to remember your past, right?
We had other priorities that day.
Yeah, so Howard Emke. So here's the thing that's cool. Like, there's this story about how in 1929 he was like this secondary kind of pitcher. He was older. His career, he had a lot of things going on in his career before that. Among them, he and Ty Cobb were pretty bitter enemies, and he hit Cobb and they fought, and there's all sorts of stuff there. But in 1929, he was on the Philadelphia A's, who had all these great pitchers, Lefty Grove and Rube Wahlberg and George Earnshaw. And we would have had the debate on talk radio, or podcasts in this case, about who should start game one. But instead, the
Yeah.
Philadelphia A's and Connie Mack started Howard Emke, who apparently had scouted the Cubs in a 3-game series, August 22nd to 24th. And I guess if you were looking for like a modern day equivalent of that, it would be like something like this Chris Paddock for the Twins saying, hey, I might be coming back at the very end of September, and I might get a chance to pitch in postseason. So why don't I go watch the Orioles and the Rays and the whoever's and sit in the stands and scout them. Did you hear that Chris Paddock like is coming back? I was like shocked by that.
Is he?
Yeah,
Good
I
for
think
him.
it was on. So yeah, it was on MLB Trade Rumors that that he was being activated. Like I guess he's been in the minor leagues, and I should know this maybe a little bit better than I do. But he was out. He had missed time because of Tommy John. He missed the entire season. He made 5 starts last year, but they've called him up after he had pitched like 3 times in the minor leagues, and now he's up with the big club. But anyway, Connie Mack said we'll go with Howard Emke, who was like he was a journeyman pitcher at that point, and he pitched this incredible World Series game, a complete game, 13 strikeouts, twice each. Hornsby, Hack Wilson, Kai Kyler, like amazing that that this happened. Definitely up there with 1925 and the ending of Game 7 as one of the more remarkable World Series baseball things that nobody of this era thinks about or knows about or necessarily cares about. Gregory Wolf, Saber Bio Project. Well done. A lot of good stuff in there. Highly recommend it. Howard Emke, and the other things with him, founded a company that produced the first tarp and that could be put on a field, threw a no-hitter, and nearly had a second straight right after that. And he would have been Johnny Vandermeer before Johnny Vandermeer, alas.
Yeah,
it's 13 strikeouts in a World Series game in 1929. That had to have been like a record at the time, right?
It was, yep.
I'm looking it up. I'm going on StatHead right now. Like
Yeah.
I'm on
You
it.
want to know the top World Series
Yeah.
strikeout games of the 1920s?
Of the 1920s, yeah.
I think I first heard of, or I first saw Emke's name because Daniel and I did a baseball history series from like 2020 to 2021, and one of the episodes was on Lefty Grove, and it's like Lefty Grove, yeah, 1929. I just saw it now. Like he had a sub-3 ERA and one of the most offensive years ever. Like, yeah, obviously that's your game 1 guy, but he was not, I think he didn't start till like game 3 or something like that. And you got Howard Emke, who threw 54 innings that year as a 35-year-old, and they're throwing him out there. But it worked. I guess it was the analytics of the time.
And the kicker to
out.
it is the next year he made 3 appearances, 10 innings, 22 hits, 13 runs, done completely. Career over.
Yeah, beat the buzzer, I guess.
He beat the buzzer, literally. 1930 career record 166 and 166. He was even Steven. He in late 1920s he began representing a Detroit-based firm that manufactured tarps that covered football fields. In 1929 he opened his own business, Emke Manufacturing, and built a canvas tarpaulin that covered the baseball infield.
Man,
Yeah, that's
big.
something.
Hey, you want to talk about stuff that stood the test of time.
It really has.
Like,
He totally has.
It's been 100 years. That tarp still exists. You go to a game, there's a rain delay. Guess what you're seeing.
He was a World Series hero and a baseball, what would you call it? You wouldn't call it equipment. Maintenance, a baseball maintenance legend.
Yeah, so we'll see what Chris Paddock has to invent years from now after he takes down the Blue Jays lineup in game 1 of the American League Wildcard Series.
I'm looking at this right now. So Howard Emke had 13 strikeouts in that game 1. The only 3 pitchers had 12 in a game before that. It was Walter Johnson. Don't know if you've heard of him. He was, I think, pretty good. But he did it in 12 innings pitched. Bill Donovan from the Detroit Tigers in 1907, who also had a 12-inning start, and then Ed Walsh, who is like maybe the best White Sox pitcher of all time, who had nine innings pitched, 2 hits, no runs, 1 walk, 12 strikeouts, a masterful performance in 1906.
Yeah, it was quite the accomplishment from the 35-year-old right-handed pitcher. And I believe yeah, I mean, all those guys you mentioned, I think, were dead ball era. So this was like the first time in the live ball era.
Technically, Walter Johnson did it in 1924.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Wow.
not quite, unfortunately, but yeah, I mean, I mean, listen, when you think of Walter Johnson's peak, you probably go to the dead ball era before you go to the live ball era. So that's all right.
So MLB Trade Rumor says it's certainly plausible that Paddock could provide Minnesota with rotation depth or a piggyback starter in the playoffs should the club wind up in a pinch at some point. He's kind of like, I guess, the 2023 version of K-Rod. Circa
Right.
the Angels 20 years ago.
Angels in 2002.
By the way,
Yeah.
if you Google Chris Paddock, one of the images that comes up immediately is him holding a very large fish.
I honestly, I believe it. Oh yeah, no, there it is. My goodness. Oh, you said a large fish. I was not ready
Yes.
for that. That is enormous. That's gotta weigh at least 100 pounds minimum.
Chris
I don't know,
Paddock.
maybe it's the angle. Like maybe he took the picture the right way. But that thing looks enormous.
Yep. Legendary fisherman.
Yeah.
Potential
Chris,
postseason legend.
Can you do you have it
sure,
up?
yeah, I'm going for it.
Can you screen share here? Because the people need to see this.
From my perspective, this seems like a trick of angles.
That's what I'm thinking as well. I think he yeah.
You think the fact that it's such a close up is the deal here?
I mean, like the iPhones these days, there's you can do some tricks with them, right?
I haven't shared screen in such a long time. Okay, there it is. There's the button.
That is a very large fish.
I mean,
Yankee would be proud.
Props to him. This is bigger than any fish I've caught in like the 2 times I've ever fished. But
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for him, maybe his forearms are insanely strong, but which is possible. He's a big guy.
Is it possible that they ripped the fish's guts out and that it's lighter?
This was posted September 3rd, so like only a few weeks ago. So like that UCL's got to be fine now, right?
Yeah, I think this was all part
like
of the
if you're reeling that thing in, and I'm assuming you're probably using your dominant elbow in some way, like that UCL's got to be all right to pitch.
I think this was all part of the recovery process. I think it's like in your program you have like your weighted balls, you have your you have your fishing. It's like minimum like 10-pound fish. I think
when I was when I interned for the Cape League, I interviewed a kid who was like coming back from Tommy John surgery, and he talked about the recovery process. I should have asked him if he went fishing.
So if the Twins are gonna do anything in the postseason, they need something extraordinary to happen.
Yeah, they need.
Yeah.
Listen, I mean, you think of the Twins in the postseason, right? Everyone's gonna go to the 18-game losing streak. Like they need something to just break that curse, right? You need something out of the box, and Chris Paddock.
Yeah, say out of the tackle box, I guess you could say. But
that was awful.
Props to him. Good for him that he made it all the way back.
Yeah.
But yeah, save Gray, Lopez, Ryan for games 2 and 2, 3, 4 bullpen. But yeah, I think that's anything more to get anyone
real quick.
Now,
I wanted to ask something. So this wasn't in my notes, but obviously we have the question that we asked to all of our guests, but we've already asked it to you. So, what are you going to do? Say Keith Hernandez again for the
the other era question.
Yeah, the StatCast era. Anyway, I believe last year you correctly predicted the final out of the World Series. right? Fly ball to right field, foul territory.
We're due. That was the tweet.
Yeah,
I think in
so
the ninth inning, I sent out a tweet that said, "We're due. Fly ball to right field."
all right, so 2023. We don't know who's playing. We don't know
Yep.
what the last game will be, if it'll be game 4, game 7, but you know something clearly. So how is this series?
Well, I'm trying to think of what hasn't
You're
happened.
saying this. I'm asking you this as someone who won't know what closers on the mound, who won't know what batters at the plate, their tendencies, what to expect, how good the defense is. But what do we got this year? I got to know early.
How about like, all right, so you got to think in terms of what hasn't happened to end a World Series, because that was the reason that I had said fly ball right
Yeah.
field was because it hadn't happened in a very long time. What hasn't happened? I'm going through them in my head. As we've discussed, this is an area of ridiculous expertise. Like, would it be like a 6U or something like that, where maybe there were guys on first and second, and there was a ground ball to short, and the shortstop just reached for it and then tagged the guy trying to go to third? Like, that would be something that would be, I don't know if that's unprecedented. You have that, the one also that's funny is there was a double play one year in one of like, I don't remember, I don't think we talked about, maybe that's next year's topic, but like, wasn't there a double play that was like something to 3-5 in a World Series in like 1921 or some obscure, another one of these Roger Peckinpah,
Yeah.
Howard Emke kind of things. I'm actually trying to stall here and look it up
Yeah.
as we speak. But it like I think something like that. A 6U would be kind of goofy. The one from the 1921 World Series. So this is crazy. 1-0 game, ninth inning, man on first, 1 out, home run, Baker up, ground ball to second. They throw the guy out at first. Baker's out. The runner on first was Aaron Ward, and Aaron Ward got aggressive and tried to go to third base, and the first baseman threw to third base, and they tagged him out. That would be High Pockets Kelly to Frank Frisch, Hall of Famer to Hall of Famer. Frankie Frisch applied the tag, and the Giants had defeated the Yankees in the World Series.
First of
I'll
all,
say 6U or something of that nature.
all right. First of all, shout out to Frankie Frisch for being on my immaculate grid today. When you think in Cardinals 100 RBI season, you got to go to Frankie Frisch. Secondly, more immaculate grid stuff. Home run Baker. So if you look at all of the like offensive stat categories that show up on the immaculate grid, right? You got 300 career batting or 300 batting average season. You got 40 runs, 100 RBI, 30 stolen bases. Guess which one of those home run Baker doesn't qualify for?
Oh, the 100 home runs.
Yeah, well, 100 home runs would be tough. 40.
Yeah,
40 home runs.
40 home runs
in a season. Yeah, very ironic. Because I mean, for a guy like I get it, home runs were not very prevalent in the era that they decided to nickname a guy home run. But when you're thinking, in A's milestones for the immaculate grid, home run Baker works unless it's home run.
Frankie Frisch, a 0.1% score in your immaculate grids today. By the way, I should acknowledge I like the idea of immaculate grid. I respect those people who play it regularly, as I'm sure that both of you do. I get very frustrated by it because I am not good at the Brewer-Oriole team combinations or the Kansas City Philadelphia team combinations or anything that involves a team combination. I like the statistical ones, but when I see a lot of team combinations, I just don't play. And yeah, it's a personal weakness. It's personal struggle. I'm trying to remedy such things, but it doesn't come easily. You'll learn as you get older.
Yeah, Kansas City and Colorado are the killers, in Arizona. They are the killers for sure.
Anytime, Chris and I will like always like kind of scoff at a grid where like you can't put a guy from the dead ball era. Where it's like, it's like, oh, it's the Phillies and the Dodgers, but it's Silver Slugger. Like, what am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah.
I can't put, like, what's his name? Chuck Klein didn't win a Silver Slugger.
Yeah.
Like, can't go there. I appreciate the fact that I introduced you to the Immaculate Grid. Like that's honestly one of my biggest honors because I texted you because Chris and I were playing it one day and I was like, oh my God, imagine Mark Simon's answers. And I texted you and I was like, are you familiar with the Immaculate Grid? And you were like, no. And I was like, this is for you.
It is
And,
very much for
and
me. It also isn't very much for me in with regards to the way that like my brain works. And I hope that come October they get creative. They have a category for last outs of the World Series or goofy, obscure World Series heroes, because as we've seen, that is a specialty
20,
for all of us.
15 defensive runs saved season. If there's 15 defensive runs saved season.
They should do that. That would be
Yeah.
we would sign on for that. Absolutely.
I did think when Sports Reference bought it that they would include like OPS season, OPS plus, like WAR. I thought they would.
You
I thought
might
they would
see
do
that
that.
eventually. They could have like
I feel like they don't want to weed out the people that don't know because like I think they're
Exactly.
just like, you know what, everyone plays this, like it's casuals, it's diehards, like let's keep it to the stuff that everyone knows. But it would be fun, maybe even just like to have a bonus grid where it's like, hey,
Yep.
guy who had a 380 OBP season, let's see it, and it has to be a qualifying season. It can't be like, you know, because like
A
for
pitcher.
300 average, if for 300 average season, like for like there was one day where it was like Rocky's 300 average, and Ubaldo Jimenez happened to have gone 1 for 3 one season. Or like the other day, it was Angels 300 career batting average, and I put Levon Soto, who hit 400 in like 22 games last year,
And you got .0001 probably for that.
something like that. Yeah,
Yep.
I was very proud because I like the only people that were coming to mind were Trout and Carew, and I was like, I don't want to put those guys. Like it's
There's a
I got
good
a
one
very
for
respect.
Diamondbacks for that we can allow the listeners to be let in on, is that if you're in need ever of a Diamondbacks 300 hitter or 1,000 OPS guy, Micah Owings is a very good choice for that.
Also,
Yep.
also a Silver Slugger.
All we had
Yeah.
I can't take credit for this. When I worked at ESPN, one of the more memorable things that I think we ran maybe 30 or 40 at bats into Micah Owings' career. The guy who now is the VP that oversees the department that I worked in had a graphic of highest OPS all time, minimum 40 at bats. And it was like all these legends and Micah Owings. And it was hilarious. And I think they put it on Sports Center and everyone got to laugh at it. And
It's fun.
yep.
Chris, can you explain the way that we play the Immaculate Grid? Because we have a very unique system that like very much is different from anyone.
Yeah. Well, so we have it's a 4-person game. It's us and 2 of our friends that we've had on for all of our draft episodes. Shout out to Nico Fasel and Rob Dickey. But Daniel came up with the idea, and it's been a great idea. I think everyone is enjoying it. But it's a point system, so you get +1 for every correct guess, +3 if you go 9 for 9 on the grid, and then +1 for each square that isn't matching someone else's square in that particular thing. So
Okay.
the most you can get, the most points you can get is 21. And if you don't get a perfect game and the winners are tied, the tiebreaker is rarity score. So whoever has the lower rarity score among the 2 will win. And we've done it month by month, except we started in like mid-June, so we counted June, July as like 1 month. And Daniel has overwhelmingly won every single month thus far, unless someone wins out September, but he's up by 6, which is crazy.
That's
It's
funny. That's a
it's
clever
so
way to play.
it's funny because like I will play the grid and I'll be like, oh, this is a good answer. Oh, Chris is absolutely gonna take that guy. There's no way. And it's like a guy that's like 0.01%.
I appreciate that you guys that you're keeping standings at that level of
Yeah.
detail, that you've kept them
Yeah.
every day. You know that they've added this thing now where like you can see what your score was on a particular day.
Yep.
Oh wow.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
they
cool.
did.
That's very new. That's hot off the presses new, I think.
We've overlapped on a Paul Wainer team combination twice. Both were like below 0.2%, which yeah, so I guess we're proud of ourselves for that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I'm more of a I don't know if you guys have ever tried it, but I'm more of a New York Times Connections kind of person, if you've seen that game.
Interesting. I've not.
It's
I think
basically
I've
like
seen you like screenshot a couple like or send or like I feel like I've seen you tweet out something related to that or no.
I don't think that was
Maybe I'm
me,
thinking of someone else.
but it's a game where like you have words and phrases and you have to find the ones that go to get like the common bond. It's essentially if you were playing Jeopardy and the category was common bonds and they gave you three things and you buzzed in and said, types of clothing or types of baseball equipment or whatever. But the way that they do it is there are certain words that kind of overlap and that could fall into a couple of different possibilities. So you have to really think it out as to which combos of four go together to make it work. I like it. It plays better to my strengths than trying to figure out who played on the Rockies and the Royals at some point in their baseball careers.
Yeah.
You actually helped me with a pick one day because the day that I sent it to you, one of the combinations was like Mets Diamondbacks, and you're like, yeah, I put Nelson Figueroa for Mets Diamondbacks. and wouldn't you know it, like 3 weeks later, the same combination came up.
Yep.
And I only could think of like Max Scherzer for Mets Diamondbacks, and
right.
I was like, who did Mark Simon put? I'm pretty sure he put Figueroa, right? So I slapped
0.1% probably.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it was a killer. No overlaps there. No one else in the group thought of that one.
You and
nice.
me, you and me, Mark.
There was one. I'll close on this. There was one that I played the other day. I'm trying to find where it was. Let's see. What was it? Wasn't Kid? Yeah, maybe it was this one that I put Kid Nichols as a 300 win pitcher for the Braves. Oh, that's okay. Yeah, that's what it was for them. So there was a Mets column in this. It was Giants, Mets, Braves, Mets, Phillies, Mets. Giants Mets, I put Charlie Williams, who was the guy that was traded for Willie Mays. Braves Mets, I put Felix Mantilla, who was on the 1962 Mets and had been drafted off of the Braves, if I'm not mistaken. And then Phillies Mets, I wanted to see just how low I could score on this. And I'm convinced if someone else put this, it's a rigged game. But I put Max Scarce. Max Scarce pitched to one batter in Mets history. He gave up a walk-off hit as his only batter faced in his entire time with the Mets. And he had previously pitched for the Phillies, as a matter of fact, and he was a Met-Philly combo. He netted me 0.1%. I'm mad that it wasn't 0.01.
Yeah, that's crazy. Who else had that? There's no shot.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, I think we've hit on everything here. We've hit on defense, early pre-TV baseball, the Immaculate Grid, the last out of the World Series. I think we got everything.
Yeah,
we got everything there.
We got bingo here.
Yeah. I don't think we have anything left on the table. That's good.
Yeah.
No Howard Emke's next time around.
We'll come up with a different 20s and 30s MLB pitcher.
We'll have to figure something out.
Branch out to the 19 teens, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to go back a step.
Totally up for it.
And end of the dead ball era.
So go make sure to first of all check out the Fielding Bible on the website. I think it fieldingbible.com, I believe it's
fieldingbible.com is correct. It is in the process of I guess a little scoopage here. It's in the process of going to be looking a little nicer in the near future, so we're looking forward to that.
Yeah. Ooh. Well, love to see that. Love to see a nice not rebrand, but a new look website. Also follow at sportsinfo_SIS and at Mark A. Simon Says on Twitter. Get a lot of good information about the defensive happenings of Major League Baseball. So thank you for coming on, Mark, and we will love having you back on again.
All right. Good stuff, guys. Talk to you down the road.
Thanks, Mark.
Another wonderful conversation with Mark Simon. You never know what direction it's going to go in, but it's going to be positive and it's going to be fun to talk to him. So really happy that he came on once again, and also just answered our general questions about the defensive landscape, because that's what we would agree is the hardest thing to analyze in baseball, because it seems like there's the least amount of information, but he seems to have a lot of it over at Sports Info Solutions. So glad to talk to him about that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. No, a lot of fun. Shout out to Mark once again for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, we will go into our players to highlight, starting with the good, with our Tuesday, September 26, 2023 edition of How About That?
He's striking out less, walking more, and he's also making better contact.
Turning into a strikeout machine just out of nowhere.
He's been excellent all around this year.
He is getting a
How about that?
So for my How About That today, this one is a long time coming. This guy's been fighting for a spot on How About That for about 2 years now, and he's finally getting it. I am talking about TJ Friedl from the Cincinnati Reds. He's taken a lot of convincing, but I'm finally giving in today. Since September 3rd, he is slashing 373, 479, 797 for a 76 OPS, a 225 weighted runs created plus, and 1.5 FWAR. He ranks 5th in batting average, 3rd in OBP, 2nd in slugging, 2nd in weighted runs created plus, and 3rd in FWAR. So essentially, he's been a top 5 offensive player in the month of September. He also has a walk to strikeout ratio of a flat 1. He's done both equally, and that is tied for 15th in the majors. Before this span, his sweet spot rate was 33%, and in this span, it is up to 40%. And also before the span, his hard hit rate was 26%, and in this span, it is up to 36%. It is a 10% increase. And also during the span, TJ Friedl has pulled 52% of all of his batted balls. That is the 9th highest rate among the 108 hitters with at least 50 batted balls. And when he pulls the ball in the span, he is hitting 538 and slugging 1308. That average ranks 6th, and his slugging ranks 2nd only to Juan Soto. And also in this span, he is hitting 438 and slugging 844 against fastballs, cutters, sinkers, and four-seamers. That average ranks 5th, and slugging ranks 4th among the 143 hitters with at least 25 batted balls in this span. And also for this season as a whole, he has 82nd percentile batter run value, 98th percentile base running run value, and 86th percentile fielding run value. So TJ Friedl has been a very complete player the whole season, and we've been seeing a lot more from him offensively in the last month.
Yeah, TJ Friedl.
How about that?
Yeah, when for context, when last year in September, last September, we had one team left for How About That, one team to check off the list.
I think it was last year, you're right.
It was the Reds, and TJ Friedl, like, when we do the research for the How About That, we usually look at like a 2 to 3 week sample to just start off and like see like, okay, who's leading in FWAR, who's leading in weighted runs created plus in this span. And TJ Friedl was like at the top of the list for like a week and a half, 2 weeks. But the problem was it was purely luck based. He had like a very below average exit velocity. He had like a 520 BABIP in the sample. He was getting a lot of like ground ball hits, and it didn't seem right to highlight him because we knew that it was a lot of luck based. But it seems in this sample that is not the case. I did see I was doing research earlier, and like he was hitting some home runs, which is unusual, but yeah, good stuff there with TJ Friedl. Like, he is kind of the embodiment of the new look, like athletic Reds. We've known that Reds is like a very power centric team, but this is a very athletic team right now with the young talent. You mentioned the base running value and the fielding value there. Like that's an athletic team, and TJ Friedl does embody that for sure. My How About That is a repeat from last year. And I think with this How About That, I think I can declare him off eligibility from How About That until further notice, because he's a really good pitcher. And I think even if he was on a higher profile team, we probably wouldn't have to highlight him here, but he's been just casually just churning through hitters. And I'm talking about Tarek Skubal of the Detroit Tigers. This year, he debuted on July 4th. I believe it was a flexor tendon. It was some sort of surgery on his flexor tendon or something of that nature regarding the elbow. It wasn't Tommy John, but it was a major surgery. But in his last 7 starts, Tarek Skubal has a 2.05 ERA, 2.19 FIP in 44 innings pitched. And out of 57 qualifying pitchers in the span, Tarek Skubal's ERA ranks 3rd and his FIP ranks 1st. Also, out of 107 pitchers with 500 plus pitches thrown in the span, his expected batting average is the lowest by 10 points, expected slugging is the lowest by 32 points, and expected WOBA is the lowest by 29 points. He is overwhelmingly the best pitcher by expected metrics. And a lot of this has had to do with him, finishing batters off more effectively. His strikeout rate has gone from 28% before the span to 35% in the span. And out of 57 qualifying pitchers in the span, Tarek Skubal's strikeout rate and strikeout minus walk rate both rank 2nd behind Freddie Peralta, who was a previous How About That for this season. And a lot of that has had to do with him getting more swings and misses. Tarek Skubal's whiff rate has gone from 26% to 35% in his last 7 starts. And out of 91 pitchers with 250 plus swings against them in the span, his whiff rate is the 2nd highest. And particularly on his changeup, he is getting swing and miss after swing and miss. His whiff rate on his changeup has gone from 38% to 56% in the span. And out of 58 pitchers with 50 plus swings against changeups in the span, his whiff rate on his changeup is the highest. And, him using the changeup, he's using it way more than he used to. His overall changeup usage has gone from 18% before the span to 29% in the span. And batters are hitting 137 and slugging 157 off that changeup. And out of 50 pitchers to throw 100 changeups in the span, his slugging against his changeup is the 6th lowest. And just in general, also, he's allowing softer contact along with all the swings and misses that he's getting. His average exit velocity has gone from 88.8 miles per hour to 86.3 miles per hour. And overall, from 2022 to 2023, Skubal's fastball velocity has increased from 94.1 miles per hour to 95.8 miles per hour. And hitters have gone from slugging 490 on that four-seam fastball to slugging 298 on it. Also, regarding batted ball metrics, his sweet spot rate has gone from 31% last year to 24% this year. And out of 123 pitchers with 150 plus batted balls against since Skubal's first start of the year, Skubal's sweet spot rate against is the lowest in baseball since he debuted this year. And along with that, him having a low sweet spot rate doesn't have to do with him particularly getting ground balls or particularly getting pop-ups. It's both. Out of 123 pitchers with 150 plus batted balls since Skubal made his first start of the year, Tarek Skubal is the only pitcher with a ground ball rate above 50% and a pop-up rate above 9%. Only pitcher out of 123 to have both of those. It's pretty unbelievable. He's getting some of the highest percentages of whiffs out there. The highest whiff rate on a changeup, along with some of the best quality of contact for a pitcher against, which is absolutely crazy. So he's been unbelievable. So definitely someone to watch out for next year. Potential Cy Young candidate there. Tarek Skubal is getting a.
How about that?
And now we will go from the highs to the lows, where we're talking players or subjects that have been underperforming with our Tuesday, September 26, 2023 edition of Slightly Alarming Statistics. He's been barreling up the ball way less.
He's not missing bats. He's not getting the ball on the ground, and people are hitting it in the air more.
It's been so bad. He is getting a.
Slightly alarming.
So for my slightly alarming, this one kind of comes with a caveat because this guy did just come off the injured list, but ever since he's been off the injured list, Chris Bryant has been not great for the Colorado Rockies. Ever since he came off the IL on September 11th, he is slashing 174, 208, 348 for a 556 OPS, a 29 weighted runs created plus. And also his minus 0.4 FWAR in this span is tied for the worst among all qualified position players. In this span, Chris Bryant has an average exit velocity of 82.7 miles an hour, and that is tied for the 9th lowest among the 200 hitters with at least 25 batted balls. Before the span, strikeout rate was 17.4%, and in the span, it is up to 29.2%. And also before the span, his walk rate was 9.4%, and now it is down to 4.2%, which means his swing decisions and his swing metrics have gotten a lot worse. Before the span, his outside swing rate was 28.1% and is now 32% in this span. His zone swing rate has gone from 74.7% to just 67.5%. His outside contact rate has gone from 63.1% to 57.5%. And his zone contact rate has gone from 88.4% to 82.7%. And lastly, his called strike and whiff rate has gone from 24.5% to 30.7%. Brian was on the injured list with a fractured finger beforehand, and I think that thing might still be hurting him a little bit.
Yeah, Chris Bryant.
Slightly alarming.
Every once in a while, you forget that he's just floating around on the Rockies, and then you catch a game, and you're like, oh right, yeah, he's there.
He's there, yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, he's. What was that? It was like 186 million or something that he got.
872, I think.
I mean,
80, I think it was 8 years, 172 is what I want to say. So I did look at it before I did the slightly alarming.
For some reason, I had like 186 in my head, but either way, good for him. He's just out there. 7 years, 182. So I think we had
So I mixed up. I said 8,172, so I mixed up the 8 and the 7.
The digits. Yep.
Yep.
My slightly alarming is a different starting pitcher. This was kind of out of laziness because I went through Scooball's span and I was like, okay, who is the worst FIP in ERA? And it was this guy. I'm talking about Miles Mikolas of the St. Louis Cardinals. I believe he's been an all-star before, but in his last 8 starts, he has a 7.24 ERA and a 6.43 FIP in 46 innings pitched. And out of 60 qualifying pitchers in this span, Miles Mikolas has the worst ERA and 3rd worst FIP. And out of 113 pitchers with 500 plus pitches thrown in the span, his expected batting average against is the worst, expected slugging against is the worst, and expected WOBA against is 2nd worst. Part of this has to do with him not finishing off batters at the same rate. His strikeout rate has gone from 17% before the span to 11% in the span. And his whiff rate on 2 strikes has gone from 16% before the span to 12% in the span. Only 1 out of every 8 swings by a hitter against Mikolas on 2 strikes is a swing and miss. And out of 90 pitchers with 100 plus swings with 2 strikes in the span, his whiff rate with 2 strikes is the lowest in baseball. Along with that, hitters are generally hitting the ball harder against him. His average exit velocity against has gone from 89.6 miles per hour to 92.1 miles per hour. And out of 85 pitchers with 100 plus batted balls in the span, his average exit velocity against is the 2nd highest. Along with that, his barrel rate has gone from 8% before the span to 14% in the span. And out of 85 pitchers with 100 plus batted balls in the span, his barrel rate is the 2nd highest. And to go pitch specific, hitters are slugging 714 off his 4-seam fastball, which is his most used pitch. And out of 131 pitchers with 150 plus 4-seamers thrown, his slugging against his 4-seamer is 4th highest. So yeah, Miles Mikolas, he's someone who gets a lot of success from soft contact, but is getting some of the hardest contact against him in his last 8 starts. And yeah, I mean, I think we talked about it in the or at least we referenced it in the Mark Simon segment, is, Cardinals pitching has not been very good this year. They haven't really added much talent to it. And yeah, Miles Michaelis is not, helping their case, having a 7.24 ERA in his last 8 starts. So he is getting a
Slightly alarming.
All right, and that shall do it for players to highlight.
Should we zip through this last part in 4 minutes and 45 seconds?
Yep. Shout out to the free Zoom account. So yeah, as far as series to watch, yeah, I mean, we have some obvious ones. Cubs Braves, you should definitely look for, just for the Cubs' sake. I mean, the Braves have pretty much everything except the 1 seed clinched, unless they might even have that clinched. But I'm not sure. Possible. They're very close to it. So yeah, just for the Cubs' sake, just watch that. Along with that, we have just watch Mariners Astros. I mean, that is the key series to watch. Mariners have a lot to gain from the series. Astros have a lot to lose at this point. So I mean, there are, the playoff odds are going to be just a roller coaster ride for both teams, depending on what the results are. So yeah, definitely watch that. That's over at T-Mobile Park. What do you got for the day-by-day pitching matchups?
Yeah, so we'll just go over anything with like some sort of legitimate playoff implications. On Tuesday, Hunter Green starts for the Reds against the Guardians in Cleveland. That's obviously a big one. Kyle Bradish and the Orioles, looking for that division crown, will be facing the Nationals at home, and Kyle Bradish is pitching today. Let's see, Kevin Gausman pitches for the Blue Jays against the Yankees. That'll be interesting for sure. And then you got Braxton Garrett going for the Marlins against the Mets at Citi Field. You have, let's see, what else are we looking for? Kyle Harrison going for the Giants against the Padres. Christian Javier and George Kirby going against each other in Astros Mariners. And then matchup of the night tonight comes from Cubs Braves. It's Justin Steele versus Bryce Elder.
Yeah. Yep. Good ground ball matchup.
Yes. So then on Wednesday, Brandon Pfaadt pitches for the Diamondbacks against the White Sox. That is in Chicago. Andrew Abbott goes for the Reds against the Guardians in Cleveland. Tyler Glasnow goes for the Rays against the Red Sox at Fenway. Grayson Rodriguez goes for the Orioles against the Nationals. Yeah, that's going on. Let's see, what else do we have that has implications? Framber Valdez and Bryce Miller will face each other in Astros Mariners. Sean Manaea and Matt Waldron, the knuckleballer, will be facing each other in Padres and Giants in San Fran. And match of the night, not a ton of playoff implications, but it's Garrett Cole versus Jose Barrios and Yankees Blue Jays.
Yeah. I mean, that's still got a lot of good stuff going on in that one.
Yeah. So then finally on Thursday, Sonny Gray goes for the Twins against the A's in Minnesota. Corbin Burns goes for the Brewers against the Cardinals. Zach Wheeler goes for the Phillies against the Pirates. Jesus Luzardo goes for the Marlins against the Mets. Marcus Stroman goes for the Cubs against the Braves. And match of the night, there's absolutely no playoff implications here, but it has to be Cole Reagans versus Sawyer Gibson-Long in Royals and Tigers at Detroit.
Yeah, you're gonna see a lot of swings and misses with that one. It is.
I am going to see a lot of swings and misses.
Yes, Daniel,
because I will be at the ballpark.
Be at Comerica Park to witness it. It's unbelievable. Yeah, love to see it. Love to see it. And yeah, we hope you enjoyed this one. If you are listening on an Apple Podcast and want to watch the conversation as it happens, go to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is called Above Replacement Radio. Check out the shorts, digital content, playlists, baseball history series, all that. And if you want to follow us on social media, follow me on Twitter at Chris_Gianta. Follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Kern, and follow the show Instagram at Above Replacement Radio for all the show needs. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we hope to see you next time, where we will be talking all the happenings in Major League Baseball. Once again, see you then.
This conversation is over.